The story begins in a kingdom called Murim. Something is happening that's turning that once peaceful place into a noisy one. One of the residents says that a terrible public enemy of Murim has appeared, and not even the Murim Alliance is able to handle this enemy. We cut to a group of adventurers discussing this enemy. It seems that he has just reached maturity, yet he is already a master in combat. We then see a person standing in front of several defeated enemies, and it's said that not even the 1 against 1,000 subjugation squad was completely useless against this warrior. People say that with a single sword, he wields the harmony between heaven and earth. They claim he summons lightning from the sky and storms that shake the entire ground, although some believe that's just an exaggeration. But the most troubling thing is that he's not just a master of swordsmanship, he also possesses knowledge of sorcery. He is capable of manipulating people's minds as he pleases, turning them into slaves. And he's so powerful that even other promising masters have already fallen under his control. The name of this warrior, known as the Star of the Dark Sect and the Demon of the Chaos Sword, is Yuhayol. Then we cut to one of the warriors defeated by him, who asks how he dares to use such dark arts and whether he isn't afraid of divine punishment. He seems thoughtful upon hearing the question, but one of his subordinates interrupts and reports that, as planned, they successfully thwarted the enemy special forces ambush and annihilated them all. However, she asks how he knew it was a trap. The Lord doesn't respond. Instead, he's just standing there, thinking about how much his back hurts. Another subordinate speaks to him, stating that, as ordered, she leaked all the confidential information they had about Murim, which has increased tensions between Murim and the other kingdoms. Once again, the Lord barely pays attention. He's just thinking about how he couldn't keep all that kingdom gossip to himself. One of the defeated soldiers tries to shout at the Lord's subordinates, telling them they need to wake up because they're all being controlled, but he's quickly silenced with a stab from someone who orders him to shut up. The one who did it was a white-haired swordswoman, who states that Lord Hyol doesn't like to be disturbed. Despite everything his subordinates are saying, Lord Hyol doesn't seem to be paying attention to anything. He picks up a wanted poster with his face on it and looks disappointed. He's completely baffled by everything that's happening but decides it's time to leave. Things are still very confusing so far, but this is just the beginning. Let's dive deeper to understand how this character became such a wanted threat. We see a flashback of a boy watching someone important to him go up in flames. He thinks about how he had nothing, not even a coin, not even a sword to defend himself. And that's why he couldn't protect anyone. Someone is taking away a white-haired, red-eyed girl who seems important to the boy. He's furious and vows to become stronger. He promises that he will become the strongest martial artist and live in a luxurious mansion so that he can rescue her. After that, we cut to a village where some merchants are drinking to celebrate having made it back alive. They say they'll report to their superior the next day. They had helped a traveling member of the Yianwan Guild. He says he expected nothing less from the village of the 6 clans and thanks them for their help. His name is Jo Yoon, and one of the merchants says it was nothing. If it weren't for him, they wouldn't have made it back safely. The world is dangerous, and since Jo Yoon carries a spear, it's worth having someone like him around. They invite him to join the guild to work together, but one of them suggests they should talk to the guild master first. Jo Yoon thanks them and says he'd love to, but he can't right now because he has a vow to fulfill, which is why he's in that city in the first place. The merchant says he understands and won't try to stop him, but warns him to be careful. Since he's a martial artist, he should know how to take care of himself, but a monster has been spotted near the village of the 6 clans. This monster hunts martial artists and brags about defeating them while carrying a sack filled with their corpses. He asks Jo Yoon if he has heard of him, one of the 2 supernovas shaking up the martial arts world. Jo Yoon says he knows him and everyone is shocked. Just then, the bar door slams open, and in walks a giant man carrying a blood-stained sack. Everyone freezes in fear as the man walks through the tavern. But Jo Yoon doesn't seem nervous at all, in fact, he even smiles. The 2 rising stars of the martial arts world will stop at nothing to achieve victory. They show no mercy to their opponents and are the great villains of this era. This man is the demonic swordsman of the heretical faction, Yuhayol. He walks in with few words and asks where the tavern owner is. A server tells him the owner is away on business but offers to find him a place to wait. She notices the blood-covered sack and offers to take it, but Hyol grabs her arm and tells her to stop, causing everyone in the bar to freeze in fear. He says that sack contains his hunted prey and no one is to touch it. The server apologizes, completely paralyzed. To make matters worse, the sack starts moving and Hyol complains about whatever's inside still being alive. He says he'll put it out of its misery right then and there. Just as he's about to reach into the sack, Jo Yoon steps in, pointing his spear spear at Hyeol's neck. He says that even though the martial arts world values strength, it's distasteful to be challenged to a duel by someone like him. The bar patrons think Jo-yoon must be out of his mind. Meanwhile, Hyeol asks if he heard correctly, did Jo-yoon really challenge him to a duel? Jo-yoon calls him nothing more than a villain who suppresses what is right and abuses his power to control ordinary people. He declares himself the hero of Murim and vows to restore the martial arts world after defeating Hyeol. Introducing himself as Jo-yoon, he finally makes Hyeol laugh for the first time since entering the tavern. Hyeol asks if Jo-yoon really thinks he's suppressing what's right and if he's truly ready to take him down in combat. He looks directly at Jo-yoon and says he's mistaken about something, but before he can continue, Jo-yoon cuts him off. He tells him he talks too much and that if he's going to make excuses, he shouldn't even bother. Jo-yoon slams his spear into the ground and declares that he's there to fight, so Hyeol should bring it on. Hyeol asks if he really wants to settle things right then and there but suggests they step outside so he can prepare. Jo-yoon accuses him of trying to escape. The bar patrons think Jo-yoon must be crazy and warn him that this is the monster they were just talking about. They say Hyeol will use any underhanded method to win, he's a true demon. Even after hearing all this, Jo-yoon thanks them for the warning. He still has his vow to become the best in the world, so he can make the bad guys tremble in fear. Hyeol steps outside to prepare, but as soon as he closes the door, he looks terrified and decides to run away. He only came here to sell his prey, which turns out to be a pig he was planning to sell to the guild. He had stopped the server earlier just to prevent her from ruining it. He doesn't understand why everyone looks at his appearance and assumes he's some kind of powerful villain. In reality, he knows nothing about martial arts and is just a third-rate warrior that people are mistaking for a lord. He has no idea what to do about Jo-yoon, who seems eager to fight him. After all, Jo-yoon is the kind of guy who throws his spear at people without warning. Hyeol realizes he needs to find a way out of this. He doesn't want to die. At least not until he fulfills the promise he made. Cutting to the outside, we see a white-haired girl walking through the crowded streets when she hears Jo-yoon calling out Hyeol for a fight. She catches his attention and he asks who she is. The girl takes off her hat, revealing her beauty, and asks about his duel with the demon of chaos, Hyeol. The moment people see her face, they immediately recognize her as the legendary swordswoman of the sun and moon, Baek Alma. She is the top disciple of the former greatest martial artist in the world, the one who defeated the top fighters of every faction, known as the Dragon and Phoenix, and the opposite of the demon of chaos. She is the leader of the Orthodox faction. Upon hearing this, Jo-yoon starts to worry because if he teams up with someone like her, he won't be able to make a name for himself. He declares that he's there to hunt down Hyeol, the so-called hero of Murim. Alma is delighted to have finally found him, and the look on her face is enough to make Jo-yoon instantly fall head over heels for her. He asks if she wants to join him, while inside, Hyeol is desperately thinking of a way to get out of this duel. He considers calling the authorities since the duel is technically illegal, but before he can do anything, the door is suddenly sliced to pieces, sending him flying. Jo-yoon stands before him and Hyeol tries to stall, saying he's not finished preparing for the fight. Alma appears behind him, saying she has finally found him after all this time. Hyeol is stunned, and the girl effortlessly slams Jo-yoon's face into the ground with a single blow. She declares that she has finally become the greatest martial artist in the world and made a fortune, just as she promised. And we see that the real promise Hyeol made wasn't to save her, but to marry her, and now she's back to collect on it. After taking such a beating, Jo-yoon is completely battered, and the doctors had to come to help him. They have no idea what happened to him. He entered with a powerful swordswoman, yet he still ended up defeated. Now, only Hyeol and Alma are alone inside the tavern, while the people outside are eagerly awaiting a fight to the death. Little do they know what's really happening inside. Hyeol doesn't recognize her but tries to bluff, saying that if she's looking for the demon of chaos, he saw him running out earlier. Hyeol has learned a very important rule since arriving in Murim. Anyone who shows up with a sword and kicks down a door is never a normal person. Seeing that this woman is definitely not normal, he decides to quietly get up and slip away. But she grabs his hand and tells him that she is not a madam. Hearing this, he immediately remembers hearing those same words when he was a child. She asks him to repeat what they used to say in the old days, and he finally realizes it's her, calling her Lady Seol. He recalls that 15 years ago, during a time of great famine, Seol was sold as a slave, and he was taken along as her servant. She was the youngest in the house where they lived and the reason he ended up in Jeonghu. She is both the beginning and the end of his journey. Hyeol thinks he must be dreaming. The person he's been searching for is sitting right beside him, drinking tea. But he's unsure why it had to be now. He's so nervous that she asks if he's going to drink his tea or not. He says he will and calls her my lady, which makes her angry because he promised to stop being so formal that day. He apologizes and calls her lady, but she doesn't like that either. Finally, he calls her Seola and says he's really happy to have found her again. This makes her happy and Hyeol can't stop smiling at how cute she is. Noticing her sword, he asks if she really became a martial artist. She confirms, saying she worked as hard as she could to keep their promise. Hearing this, Hyol finally remembers the promise they made to get married all those years ago, but something feels off. She asks if he remembers the promise, and he says he does, while she explains that she heard rumors and came to see if it was really him. He asks what rumors, and she mentions the rumors about the demon of chaos. She's disappointed to hear about his alleged misdeeds with women and prepares to leave. Hyol immediately demands to know who's been spreading such rumors in the first place. He says he doesn't care what people say about him, what matters is that they both kept their promises. Seol agrees and asks if they can get married right away. What she didn't expect was for Hyol to say that someone has already proposed to him. In Murim, there are two things that even the greatest masters can't escape. One is the passage of time. The other is rental schemes. Hyol explains that out of all the terrible days he's had in Jianghu, one day stands out above the rest. One day, while minding his own business, someone approached him and asked if he was the infamous demon of chaos, Hyol. She then asked if he needed money and introduced herself as Han Kyung, a merchant from the Eternal Company. The scene cuts to Seol dragging Hyol to the Eternal Company to settle his debt. Seol says she's heard about Hyol's debt and that Han Kyung is using people's debts to control their lives and incomes. The merchant says that's embarrassing and Hyol agrees, but for different reasons. Basically, Hyol had told his own version of the story to Seol, lying and making it seem like Kyung was extorting him and others, painting her as a villain. But in reality, Kyung was just helping him. He did this because he feels insecure about marriage. Seol is an incredible martial artist, and she's convinced that he is too. If she finds out he's weak, it could spell trouble for him if she asks what he's been doing all these years while she was working to fulfill their promise. He's begging Kyung to play along with his lie just this once. Kyung explains that there was a misunderstanding. They simply bought Hyol's famous name in exchange for a small favor. However, Kyung picks up on Hyol's signals and realizes he wants her to get rid of Seol for him, though she doesn't understand why. Seol asks how much this small favor cost, and Kyung replies that it's complicated because the contract they signed uses his reputation as collateral. If she had to put a number on it, she'd say something large, like 100,000 niangs. Hyol, realizing she got his hint, thinks to himself that he expected nothing less from a top merchant of one of the world's greatest trading guilds. He believes he's bought himself some time since he can't marry Seol until he pays off his debt. But then, Seol casually pulls out a huge sack of money and slams it on the table. It contains exactly the amount needed to settle the debt. Hyol wonders where on earth she was hiding all that money. He asks if she isn't spending too much at once, but the swordswoman insists it doesn't matter because he'll have much more once they're married. She says there's nothing she wouldn't spend for him, and this line hits Hyol right in the heart. Kyung confirms there's even more than 100,000 niangs in the bag and asks if she can release him now that the debt is paid. But Kyung sees an opportunity to make a little extra and tells them to wait. Seol asks if the money isn't enough, and out of nowhere, Kyung says it is. But she adds that their relationship isn't something that can be measured by money alone and suddenly hugs Hyol, calling him her dear husband. Seol is filled with rage at the sight. Hyol, confused and panicked, asks what the hell Kyung thinks she's doing, but Kyung calmly tells him to go along with the plan since the goal was to get rid of Seol. However, this doesn't seem like a good idea because Seol draws her sword, charging it with electricity, and demands that Kyung get away from him before she makes her. Seol is furious and Hyol desperately tries to calm her down. At first, it seems like it won't work, but he steps in front of Hyung and says that she's also an important person to him. Seol thinks for a moment and in the end, she stops her attack. Hyol breathes a sigh of relief, glad he managed to survive this mess. He apologizes, but Seol turns her back and leaves. Hyung assumes he must be happy to have finally gotten rid of her. She proudly claims that, as a merchant, she's great at reading situations and asks if this wasn't exactly what he wanted in the first place. Hyol leaves the office, but he doesn't look pleased with the outcome. His aura of depression makes everyone around him nervous. He realizes the look on Seol's face. She seemed disappointed and probably thinks he betrayed her. Back when they first met, she was just the daughter of a noble and he was a servant. He always wanted to close the gap between them. Now, he feels guilty for making her work so hard to become a master, and he doesn't want to let her effort go to waste. For now, his priority is to find her again. Luckily, he overhears some gossip about someone running through the mountains earlier that morning, looking completely pale, as if they had just lost their soul. When one of the villagers mentions that she might have run toward the cliff, Hyol immediately fears the worst, thinking she might try to jump. He rushes to ask the villagers where she went, and just the sight of his shadow is enough to terrify them. Without wasting a second, he dashes into the forest to search for her. Hyol can't believe she would do something like that, but since people said they saw her heading that way, he decides to check everywhere. After searching for a while, he finally finds someone at the edge of the cliff. It looks dangerous, with a sign warning people to be careful. Panicked, he runs toward the figure, begging them not to do it and saying he'll go through with the wedding or whatever else they want. But it turns out it's not Seol up there, it's an old man who asks what the heck he's talking about. A tense moment follows, with the old man even jokingly asking if Hyol wants to marry him. Embarrassed, Hyol lets him go and explains that it was all a misunderstanding. He thought the old man was someone else. He awkwardly tries to leave, but the old man calls him back, asking if he's really going to say something like that and just walk away without taking responsibility. As Hyol tries to explain himself, the old man gives him a life lesson, saying there's no such thing as mistakes when it comes to feelings. He tells Hyol he shouldn't think he's the only one feeling nervous. He warns him not to underestimate what's in the heart of that young woman. Hyol tries to ask who the old man is, but just then, his granddaughter arrives out of nowhere, scolding him and dragging him back home to take his medicine. Hyol is left completely confused and disappointed that he ended up receiving love advice from a senile old man. After helping the girl take him home, he starts thinking seriously about Seol's feelings. He wonders why he's even taking the old man's advice so seriously, but eventually makes it back home, where Seol is already there waiting for him, greeting him warmly. She tells him that when she arrived in the village, this was the first place she returned to, and she's been waiting for him all afternoon. Hyol asks if she cried, and she lies, saying she didn't, but he knows it's not true. He explains that there's nothing between him and the merchant, and Seol says she knows he's not that kind of person. However, it's clear that he would do anything to avoid marrying her. Realizing she's figured it out, he admits that she's right, he can't marry her right now. Seol looks sad but says she understands and prepares to leave. Not wanting her to go, Hyol finally tells her the whole truth. He reveals that he earns a miserable salary and that without Hyung's help, he wouldn't even be able to afford the tiny house he lives in. He confesses that all the rumors about him are lies, he's not strong, and he hasn't fulfilled the promise he made to her. But if someone like him is still worthy of loving someone like her, he asks Seol to wait just a little longer. He swears he'll fulfill his promise no matter what. She agrees to wait and they hug for a while. But as time passes and they're still hugging, Hyol starts to get suspicious and asks what's going on. That's when Seol says that if they can't get married now, she's fine with it, if that's what he wants. Then, out of nowhere, she throws him to the ground with all her strength and jumps on top of him, saying it's even better this way because it'll make the wedding more special, since their future children will be able to attend the ceremony. We don't see what happens next, but judging by the face of a bystander watching from a distance, well, it's pretty obvious. Sometime later, rumors spread that a member of the Orthodox sect was conquered by a member of the unorthodox sect. Thanks to that nosy bystander who saw them together, everyone now believes Hyol defeated the swordswoman and took her as his wife. People even claim he won by taking her family hostage. This whole story reaches the ears of a certain girl, who, upon hearing the news about Hyol, decides to seek him out. She's a member of the Seishin Tang clan and speaks in a rather unusual way. However, she sees a lot of potential in Hyol and plans to fight him to determine who is the strongest and claim the title of the greatest under heaven, though she hasn't made it clear what that really means yet. A few days later, Hyol and Seol are living together. Suddenly, a guy shows up yelling for Hyol, cursing him every way he can, and declaring that today is the day they settle everything once and for all. He's been waiting a long time for this moment and won't hold back anymore. He asks if Hyol remembers what day it is, and just then, Seol appears behind him, placing her sword at his neck. She coldly states that today is the anniversary of his death. Seol claims to be the lady of the house, but the man insists that he's actually the owner of the land. And today is rent day. After the confusion settles, they head inside, and Seol goes to cook lunch for them. Meanwhile, the landlord is discussing rent with Hyol. Hyol complains about the price, but the landlord fires back, saying that not only is he late with the payment, but he also tried to kill him the last time he came to collect. He reminds Hyol that he destroyed an entire hotel in town. Desperate, Hyol tries offering that pig as compensation, which only makes the landlord even angrier. But Seol is silently watching everything from the corner, so Hyol stays quiet and tries to behave. The landlord asks who she is, and Hyol explains everything, that she's his childhood friend he mentioned before. The landlord is shocked to learn that she's actually a real girl. However, when Hyol mentions her name, Baek Sealma, the landlord suddenly realizes who he's dealing with and asks if the rumors about him hypnotizing her are true. It turns out the landlord is one of the few people who know the truth, that Hyol isn't the fearsome demon lord everyone thinks he is. He always tries to debunk the rumors to help him. But this particular rumor spread so fast that he couldn't contain it. Hyol asks why people would think that, and the landlord says that believing he hypnotized her is much easier than believing she's genuinely in love with him and feeding him by hand. The landlord warns Hyol that he's under a spotlight now. Hyol starts to worry. He never thought things would attract this much attention. But Seol reassures him, saying it's fine because she'll always be by his side. After hearing how much she cares, Hyol promises to work hard to get a better house for them. That way, the world won't try to separate them anymore, and he'll finally be able to propose to Seol properly. The landlord, already fed up with all this talk, asks if Hyol is finally ready to pay the rent. The scene cuts, and we see the landlord grinning from ear to ear, because they've returned to Hyung's office to reclaim the 100,000 niangs they handed over the previous day, compensation for her hitting on Hyol and causing all the drama. Seeing all that money, the landlord suggests they should just go ahead and buy the house. Hyol refuses, saying he wants to save the money for a better opportunity. Besides, the money belongs to Seol, not him. But Seol corrects him, saying the money belongs to both of them now since they're getting married in the future. This makes the landlord pull a disgusted face, but he says that if they can at least save money, he can rest easy knowing they'll be able to pay rent from now on. He warns Hyol not to do anything stupid and to keep anything dangerous from Murim away from their home. Hyol reassures him, saying that nothing bad will happen to their house, he's got it under control. The scene cuts again, and in less than a second, his words jinx him completely. Because their entire house is now on fire, they stand there, mouths agape, and with no other choice, Hyol hands the money over to the landlord to cover the damages. Emerging from the flames is the culprit behind the destruction. It's the girl from the previous chapter. She lands in front of them and introduces herself as the new representative of the Seishin Tang clan. Her name is Tang Hai, the venomous phoenix. She has come here specifically to assassinate Hyol. Tang Hai, full of excitement, challenges him to a fight, but Seol is so furious that she slashes through the girl's speech bubble. And with that same slash, she accidentally destroys the landlord's house as well. Seol glares at Tang Hai and demands to know why she's here. Tang Hai, still thrilled, says it's been a long time since she's seen Seol and gets ready for battle. Tang Hai says that the rumors were true after all. It wasn't part of her plan, but since it has come to this meeting, she's going to show the power of the Seishin Tang clan's poison technique. However, when the scene cuts, Tang Hai is already buried in the ground, unable to move. Looks like Seol doesn't waste any time. After this so-called fight, they manage to put out the fire, and Hyol insists they listen to Tang Hai's reason for attacking, while the landlord continues lamenting over his burned-down house. Tang Hai, still acting casually despite being stuck in the ground, declares that even though she lost, she's still the heir of the Seishin Tang clan and that the fight isn't over yet. She signals for her partner to attack, and out of the shadows emerges another figure ready for battle. But before Tang Hai can even finish introducing her, Seol buries her into the ground as well. It turns out this was Tang Geo, the so-called silent assassin, who didn't get to do much. Once again, Hyol tries asking why they were attacking. Tang Hai finally explains, saying it's only natural for a member of the Orthodox sect to invade the lands of a rival sect leader to rescue a kidnapped ally. She insists that using fire as an introduction to an attack is a basic tactic, something that makes the landlord even angrier, if that's even possible. Tang Hai says Hyol shouldn't be surprised because he kidnapped the swordswoman, so this attack was simply karma coming back to him. But something seems off to Hyol. During the fight, Tang Hai clearly said she would kill Seol, so why would she try to kill the person she supposedly came to rescue? Tang Hai tries to brush it off, saying she only said that in the heat of battle, but her bodyguard spills everything, revealing that Seol was always the real target. She explains that 2 years ago, during a tournament in Murim, Tang Hai was completely crushed by Seol, and she's held a grudge ever since. She had been waiting for her chance to get revenge, though her bodyguard feels she might be taking things a bit too far. Tang Hai scoffs, saying it doesn't matter. In the end, Hyol still kidnapped Seol, so if she can kill him, she'll get the reward and also settle the score with Seol, 2 birds with 1 stone. When Hyol asks Seol if she remembers Tang Hai, the swordswoman doesn't even recall who she is. This only makes Tang Hai even angrier. She declares that she's done with this humiliation. She was the only one humiliated by Seol, and before it happens to anyone else, she's going to end it all right here. She orders Tang Geo to get it, and the bodyguard can't believe she's actually going to use that. Suddenly, Tang Geo starts glowing green and dashes toward Hyol, but misses completely. Seol, seeing this, says they won't let her escape so easily. But then, out of nowhere, Tang Geo returns, this time bringing something with her. Tang Hai says she didn't want to resort to this, but she had no choice. Kindness for kindness, hostages for hostages. It turns out Tang Geo has kidnapped an elderly woman and is holding a knife to her throat. They demand that Hyol and Seol surrender if they don't want anything bad to happen to the old woman. The only problem is Hyol has no idea who that woman is. Tang Hai asks if he's really so heartless that he forgot his own mother. but Hyol insists that she's not his mother. His mother passed away when he was 5. Tang Hai is completely confused. It turns out she mistook the old woman for Hyol's mother because her son had a similar name. The elderly woman, who was scared just moments ago, is now furious and starts scolding Tang Hai. Frustrated that her terrible plan has failed, Tang Hai demands that they just surrender already. She yells for them to stop lying to her and starts crying, begging them to stop treating her like an idiot. Tang Jio, meanwhile, decides to take matters into her own hands, demanding they surrender or she'll kill the hostage. The elderly woman, now playing along, calls Hyol's son in an attempt to save herself. All the commotion starts drawing a crowd, and the only thing people hear is that Hyol abandoned his own mother to save himself. Gossip spreads quickly, and the rumors start to irritate Hyol. Eventually, he loses his patience and starts badmouthing Tang Hai and her entire clan. He really shouldn't have done that. Insulting her title, the most precious thing to her, pushes Tang Hai over the edge. Furious, she breaks free and pulls out several needles, demanding to know what nonsense he just spouted about her clan. Tang Hai then launches the needles at Hyol, but Seol easily deflects them, scoffing and asking if Tang Hai really thought she'd just stand there and let the attack hit. However, Tang Jio reveals that they were counting on Seol deflecting most of the attack, but not all of it. And just as expected, one of the needles slips through and strikes Hyol directly. The protagonist collapses into Seol's arms, and she can't believe this is happening. But he reassures her, telling her that it's okay, there's no need to worry. They embrace, and he apologizes for making her worry over nothing. Despite how serious it looked, it wasn't a knife or anything deadly that hit him, just a needle. However, Tang Hai suddenly bursts into laughter, saying that he's talking a lot for someone who's already dead and doesn't even realize it. She asks if they really think what she threw was just an ordinary needle. She then explains that the needle was coated with a powerful poison from her clan, the ultimate poison, Thousand Fragrance acidic root. According to her, the poison must have already spread through his body and is on its way to his dantian, the core of a person's internal energy. Once it reaches there, it will cause him to die in extreme agony. This poison infects the dantian and spreads through the user's energy. The more energy they have, the more deadly it becomes. That's why it's known as the master-killing poison. Warriors end up being betrayed by the very energy they've cultivated for so long, and they die a miserable death. She starts counting the seconds until the poison takes effect, but unfortunately for her, Hyol doesn't have much energy to begin with, so the poison is barely giving him a few tingles. Tang Hai slowly starts getting paranoid, wondering if she forgot to apply the poison properly or if she used the wrong one. She decides to test it by pricking her own finger with the needle. The moment it touches her, she collapses to the ground, writhing in pain from the venom. Hyol, completely confused, decides to take her home. When she wakes up, Tang Hai is utterly bewildered to find herself in the village doctor's house. She's not happy to see Hyol there, but he explains that he found her convulsing on the ground and thought it was best to bring her for treatment. He then asks if she still wants to fight after everything that happened. Tang Hai is shocked. In her mind, the only way to neutralize such a deadly poison is by having complete control over the body's energy flow. Returning to purity, an extremely advanced technique, requires an internal energy level that rivals a sect leader. She asks why Hyol saved her. He replies that, despite Sialma being angry, they still had some unresolved matters to discuss. Hearing this, Tang Hai becomes scared, thinking this must be how the other warriors corrupted by the demon of chaos felt, and now it's her turn. However, she admits that she realized Seol wasn't being controlled and that no hostages were actually being threatened. She says she'll apologize to Seol later, surprising Hyol with how quickly she accepted the truth. Trying to move on to the real issue, Hyol asks about her family, but Tang Hai insists they have nothing to do with this and that she can handle everything on her own. In response, Hyol says that if she can handle things on her own, then it's time to start. He asks if she remembers the 100,000 niangs he spent to pay for the house she burned down. Well, now it's time for her to earn that money back. The scene cuts and we see Tang Hai working to repay the debt. She wonders how things got to this point, and Hyol reminds her that she was the one who said she'd do anything to repay him. He then asks if she'd prefer another way to make money. Judging by his look, whatever he's thinking isn't something good. With no other choice, she continues working as a receptionist. Seol stays close to the protagonist, which annoys Tang Hai a bit, but Seol claims she's just making sure no one else tries anything funny. Despite everything, Seol is still disappointed that she couldn't protect her master and vows to do everything in her power to make sure he never gets hurt again. Seol has been sitting on Hyol's lap for quite some time now. At first, he was uncomfortable, but soon they're hugging and almost going further, right in front of everyone. That's when they realize something important. Tang Jio, Tang Hai's bodyguard, is missing. Cutting to another scene, we see Tang Jio walking through the city, complaining about the heat. She grumbles about how Seol was way too strong and then, in a surprising move, removes her mask. revealing that the face everyone saw wasn't her real one. She's actually a long-haired beauty underneath. She smirks and says it's finally time for her to make a move. But she also mentions that she hopes to meet Hyul again, calling him her dear rival. Just what kind of connection does she have with the protagonist? Back to the protagonist, he's training hard to become stronger because he remembers how both his mother and childhood friend were taken away from him. He wonders what kind of lunatic might show up next to try and take him down. Even though he's managed to escape so far, he knows he needs to get stronger to prevent it from happening again. According to him, in Jianghu, only the fittest survive. He asks Seol for some training advice since he's still too weak, even compared to third-rate warriors, while Seol is already a master. Feeling embarrassed, he admits he can't even perform breath control, which is a basic technique. Seol reassures him by saying that at least his muscles are well trained, though Hyul realizes she's just using this as an excuse to get close to him. He decides to focus on his internal energy training later. Later, Seol, knowing full well that Hyul has no control over his internal energy, offers to help him train. Excited, he agrees, as he's never tried it before, but judging by the look on her face, it's clear she has other intentions with this training. Seol explains that they need to align their dantians for the training to work. Briefly, she explains that there are 3 key points where energy is concentrated: the upper, central, and lower points. They begin the training, but just at that moment, Tang Hai bursts through the door, yelling that they're fools for training their energy without having a guard to protect them. She was about to attack them but stops, confused by why Seol is taking Hyul's clothes off. To make things worse, the landlord barges in, demanding to know what all the noise is about. He scolds Hyul, even though it's not his fault, calling him an ingrate for destroying the hotel when he let them stay there for free. Luckily for Hyul, Hyung appears at the door, saying she heard they were having some trouble. Seol, now completely furious at everyone interrupting her moment with Hyul, glares at them. Hyung, unfazed, says that if they're looking for a better place to stay, and maybe make some quick money, she has just the thing they need. The scene cuts to them riding in a carriage, heading to the location Hyung suggested. They barely leave town when a group of bandits appears to attack. The bandits immediately demand that the driver hand over everything, claiming they need to inspect the carriage. But the moment they open the door, the bandit's smug grin disappears. Inside, Hyul and the rest of the group are just sitting there, silently glaring at the intruder. Before he even realizes it, part of his hair is cut clean off, to teach him a lesson. In the next scene, we see that all the bandits have been effortlessly captured. Hyung comments that these were just small-time thugs trying to make some quick cash, but they're not the real threat. The real problem is the green bandits who are rumored to be lurking nearby. Unlike ordinary bandits, these ones know martial arts, making them a far greater threat. They're also much smarter, operating under the radar to avoid drawing attention from the Martial Artists Alliance and the government. Hyung mentions that, for some reason, they've been getting more violent lately, attacking anyone who crosses their path. Unfortunately, it's too late to take a detour now. Besides, they're transporting a very important item, which is why Hyung hired them as escorts in the first place. Hyul, feeling grateful for all the help Hyung has given them, and the payment she's offering, says they have no reason to refuse. However, he still doesn't understand why Tang Hai tagged along. She claims it's because she couldn't just sit back while innocent people suffer at the hands of bandits. In reality, though, Hyung offered her 100,100 niangs to come along. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a distant whistle, signaling the arrival of the green bandits. Tang Hai steps out of the carriage first, confidently telling them to relax, she'll take care of things herself. The bandits are ready for a fight, and so is Tang Hai. However, when she realizes they outnumber her, she hesitates. Seol steps out and casually says she'll handle them all in under 10 seconds, suggesting Tang Hai stay in the carriage and train with Hyul instead. This infuriates Tang Hai, who insists she doesn't need help dealing with such small fry. She throws her explosive darts which, as the name suggests, explode on impact. Unfortunately, the explosions hit the mountainside they're standing on, causing a massive rock slide that sends everyone tumbling down the cliff, separating the group. Meanwhile, we cut to the bandit camp, where the green bandits are strategizing their next move against the escorts. Their leader says not to worry, as the initial wave was just a test to gauge their strength. He also mentions that he's already called for reinforcements, and the real mission will begin once that person arrives. Just then, a soldier arrives, reporting that the advance team they sent was completely wiped out. The leader assumes it must mean the guards are strong, but the soldier awkwardly explains that both the guards and their own men were blown up during the battle. Everyone in the camp is left in confusion. Back to Hyul's group, after the chaotic fall, they ended up separated. And to make matters worse, Hyul has landed on top of Hyung during the fall. We then see a flashback of Hyung talking to another merchant. He asks if they can really trust this guy's abilities. Hyung responds that trust is a funny notion to begin with. She questions whether humans can really be associated with the word trust at all. Cutting back to the present, it turns out that Hyul and Hyung fell into the water, and Hyul managed to swim swim them to safety. He's absolutely livid with Tang Hai, swearing that she'll pay for what she did when they meet again. Hyung still hasn't woken up, but at least they weren't buried under the landslide. However, he can't light a fire because it would attract the bandits. Hyul wonders if Sealma is okay, but he knows she's much stronger than he is. Searching for her would only slow things down, so he decides it's best to focus on getting down the mountain first. He remembers his promise to Seal that they would never be separated again, but now it's happened. To make matters worse, a group of bandits appears. With no other choice, Hyul draws his sword and tries to scare them off. When the bandits see his clothes, they immediately recognize him as the Demon of Chaos. Turns out, they're actually his fans and are thrilled to have finally found him. They assume he captured the merchant leader, Hyung, and offer to take care of her for him. Thinking quickly, Hyul lies, saying he prefers to handle his own prey. Luckily for him, the bandits believe he's the reinforcements their leader mentioned earlier, but kept a secret for some reason. Hyul is so lucky that they even think the landslide was caused by one of his stolen powers. Taking advantage of their confusion, he asks if they found a white-clothed survivor among the merchants, referring to Seol. The bandits say they haven't, but it's possible another group has. Hyul orders them to report immediately if they find any survivors. He plans to use the bandits to his advantage, but one of them almost ruins his plan by mentioning the Merchant Guild's previous agreement with the Demon of Chaos. Thinking fast, Hyul spins the story, saying he only accepted their offer to serve as an escort to lure them into this mountain ambush. This clears their suspicions. Just then, Hyung wakes up at the worst possible moment. Hyul nearly panics, but he remembers she's good at reading situations and hopes she'll catch on to his plan. He gives her a subtle wink, hoping she'll play along, but instead, she starts kicking him. Hyul isn't sure if she's acting or genuinely mad at him. Before they can argue further, they arrive at the bandit fortress, a massive stronghold that looks like a war fort. Hyul starts trembling again, realizing that once inside, it will be much harder to fool the bandit leader. He needs to think of a way to get out with Hyung as soon as possible. In his desperation, he remembers Seol's breath control technique and uses it as an excuse. He loudly declares that he needs to practice before entering the hideout. The bandits, thinking he must have used a powerful technique earlier, agree that he should recover. They offer to stand guard while he trains. Using his quick wit, Hyul says he doesn't want to be protected by a bunch of weaklings and insists on training alone. One bandit volunteers to watch over Hyung to prevent her from attacking him, but Hyul insists that a hunter should enjoy his prey, taking her with him instead. This terrifies both the bandits and Hyung, but it buys him more time to come up with a plan. Once they're far enough, Hyul removes Hyung's gag, and she immediately starts cursing him out, calling him every name in the book. She tells him she should never have agreed to work with a piece of trash like him. Hyul, oblivious, is delighted, thinking she's acting to fool the bandits. Realizing he's hopeless, Hyung decides to play along and asks why he didn't just beat up everyone and escape with her. Hyul lies, saying that if he started a fight, it would never end, and protecting her while fighting would be too difficult. Hyung, pretending to believe him, agrees and suggests they head down the mountain. Hyul offers to escort her halfway down, but after that, she'll have to continue on her own. Hyung is furious, pointing out that the forest is crawling with bandits and she'll be in danger alone. Her yelling draws attention, and soon enough, more bandits appear. They hide and listen as the bandits discuss their latest captives. The bandits mention that they've captured Seol, and she put up such a fight that they needed reinforcements to take her down. Hyul freezes. Hyung, realizing his true intentions, asks if this was why he wanted to leave her behind, to search for Seol in the mountains. She warns him that if someone as strong as Seol was defeated, then the reinforcements must be no ordinary fighters, and they should retreat while they still can. But Hyul refuses. No matter the skill or number of opponents, he swore he would never lose anyone again. That was the promise he made to Sealma. Hyung challenges him, asking if he values this promise more than the contract to escort her safely. Hyul reassures her that he won't abandon his duty and promises to escort her down to safety first. Suddenly, Hyung starts taking off her clothes in front of him and tells him to do the same. Since she's the leader of the Merchant Guild, it's too dangerous for her to be recognized. They improvise disguises with what little they have, and Hyul ends up practically naked due to their lack of materials. After the awkward disguise scene, we cut to a prison cell where Seol is being held captive, patiently waiting for Hyul to come and rescue her. At the bandit hideout, the guards are patrolling when suddenly Hyul and Hyung arrive in disguise. Hyul tries to talk his way through, but it doesn't work. They recognize him immediately and ask if he really thinks they're that stupid. He's about to blow their cover when Hyung, always one step ahead, slaps one of the bandits across the face. She scolds them, saying it's obvious they don't recognize them, because they're part of the reinforcements the bandit leader called for. Hyung gives them a stern lecture, asking which idiot trained them to treat fellow reinforcements so poorly. The bandits, thoroughly convinced, kneel and apologize, then escort them to the entrance of the hideout. Once inside, the place is in complete ruins. One of the bandits explains that they've been stealing more lately to raise money for repairs. Apparently, out of nowhere, a massive blue energy sword fell from the sky, destroying part of the mountain along with several sections of the hideout. Hyol immediately knows who was behind that sword and starts feeling sentimental, thinking about Seol. He reassures himself that no matter what happens, he will protect the merchant leader. As they pass through an area that serves as both a prison and a storage room, Hyol seizes the opportunity. He quickly knocks out the bandit guiding them and snatches his keys. They walk through the prison corridors until Hyol spots a familiar figure in one of the cells. Excited, he yells for Seol, but Hyung quickly shushes him, warning that they'll get caught. However, as they approach the cell, it's revealed that it's Tang Hai inside, not Seol. Tang Hai smirks, saying she didn't expect him of all people to come rescue her. Both Hyol and Hyung are visibly disappointed, but they decide to free her anyway. Once out, Tang Hai explains that she hasn't seen Seol anywhere. She was imprisoned with a few other merchants, but they were released quickly. This leads them to suspect that Seol must not have been captured by these weak bandits. This must have been a trap to lure the merchant leader and Hyol here. For now, they focus on escaping before the guards notice. Tang Hai warns them that the prison alarm system triggers when a cell door is opened, alerting everyone that a prisoner has escaped. Sure enough, a group of bandits arrives, and their leader smugly declares that they fell right into his trap. Hyung tells Tang Hai to use her explosive darts to blow everyone up, but Tang Hai admits she lost them when they fell off the cliff. They start bickering, with Hyung calling Tang Hai useless, but their argument is cut short when Hyol asks how they're going to escape. Hyung, however, has a different issue. She tells them they won't be escaping. The bandits recognize Hyol as the demon of chaos and are already trembling just from his presence. Tang Hai grins, saying that since she can't fight, she'll leave everything to him. The problem? Hyol is terrible at fighting and has never won a real battle. He has no idea what to do. The bandit leader, on the other hand, starts getting nervous. He thinks they might have walked into a trap and been lured into fighting the infamous demon of chaos. Hyol, trying his best to bluff, starts throwing out nonsense intimidation lines. To his surprise, the bandit leader buys it and suggests they retreat. Everything seems to be going well for Hyol, until someone steps forward from the back of the group. A menacing bandit emerges and orders them to stop the nonsense. He introduces himself as Woo-suk, one of the 8 heroes of the Green Forest. Hyung immediately recognizes him and realizes that the reinforcements the bandits requested must include someone like him. Their plan to trick the enemies using Hyol's reputation has just failed. Suk asks why Hyol is standing with the enemy and offers him a chance to switch sides. He promises better pay and argues that martial artists who follow the unorthodox path should stick together. Hyung panics, worried that Hyol might break their contract and join Suk. Suk smirks, telling Hyung she has no right to decide anything, reminding her that, in this world, the only thing worth trusting is money. Once again, he offers Hyol the opportunity to betray his friends and join them. For a moment, Hyung is genuinely scared, unsure of what Hyol will do. But then, Hyol slaps Suk's hand away, declaring that martial artists always think they can take whatever they want just because they have a little power. He finally answers Suk's earlier question, "Why am I here?" by saying he's here to make sure he never loses another important person in his life. This declaration not only touches Hyung but also buys enough time for someone else to arrive. Suddenly, Seol enters the scene. Fuming with rage, she demands to know what Hyol meant by important person. When Seol entered the room, everyone felt 2 distinct presences. One was an overwhelming beauty. The other was a deadly aura of murderous intent, so intense that it overshadowed everything, even her beauty. But oddly enough, everyone sensed it except for Hyol. Instead, he was too busy feeling relieved as Seol pulled him into a tight hug. She asked if he was hurt, and Hyol reassured her that he wasn't but had been really worried. He asked where she had been all this time. Seol replied that she had been searching the entire fortress for them, cutting down anyone who got in her way. Tang Hai, of course, was the only one who didn't look too thrilled to see the swordswoman again. Hyung, meanwhile, realized that Seol had shown up all dramatic like this just to flex on her, and she felt utterly humiliated. But Seol's anger wasn't directed at Hyung, it was aimed at Tang Hai. Pointing her sword at her, Seol reminded Tang Hai that she had already warned her what would happen if she put Hyol in danger again. Now it was time to pay the price. Seol then declared that everyone in the room, except for her and Hyol, was going to die. Hyol, panicking, reminded her that they still had a contract with Hyung and asked if she could at least spare her and Tang Hai this time. Seol sighed and agreed, saying fine. Everyone except these four will die. At that moment Suk, furious, charged at Seol with his axe. Hearing all of this was starting to seriously piss him off. He asked if she was really the swordswoman of the sun and moon that everyone had been talking about. Suk reasoned that since she had been wandering around the fortress all day, she must be exhausted. He pointed out that it's impossible to recover ki in enemy territory, so she must be nearly out of energy. He attacked again, adding that it didn't matter, even if she lost an arm or a leg, she'd still be valuable merchandise. The bandits bragged that their boss, Suk, was a complete martial arts master, and none of them compared to his strength. Seol dodged his axe strikes, but Hyol noticed that she was starting to slow down. He couldn't just stand there and watch, but as the fight continued, he slowly realized she didn't need his help. She was casually holding off his attacks, even chatting with Hyol in between dodges while Suk desperately tried to land a hit. Suk, as the leader of the bandits, had always taught his subordinates to focus on mastering a single technique, believing that refining one skill to perfection was the key to success. His own path was raw strength above all else, and now, he put everything into a final, devastating attack, an attack that symbolized his entire life of mediocrity up to that moment. It was powerful enough to shatter a 400-kilogram boulder, but Seol was the greatest talent of her era. She looked at his attack and decided that if she couldn't kill him, then she would break him. Casually, she unleashed a strike powerful enough to split the entire world in two. The secret technique of sun and moon, twilight dawn. Hyol, watching in awe, muttered that she was definitely overdoing it. Her attack obliterated the entire fortress. Grabbing Hyung's hand, Hyol dragged her out as quickly as possible, dodging falling debris. They barely made it out alive, with Seol leading them all to safety. Once outside, Hyol handed Hyung the precious cargo they were supposed to protect during the journey, which Seol had conveniently found while searching the fortress. Hyung wanted to thank Seol, but she was too busy burying the dead, along with Tang Hai, who begrudgingly helped. Seol also separated Suk's body from the rest so they could collect the bounty later, something that would help pay for the damages Tang Hai had caused to the merchant's carriage. Hyung sighed and told Hyol she wouldn't charge him anything extra, at least since they recovered the important item. But she was starting to get tired of Seol constantly breathing down her neck out of jealousy. She admitted that she didn't understand martial arts very well, but if Hyol were really at Seol's level of power, he could have easily taken care of the bandits and Suk by himself. She asked why he didn't just hand her over when he had the chance. It would have been far more beneficial for him. But Hyol shook his head, explaining that he made a promise to take responsibility and protect her. Hyung chuckled at this and teased him, saying that trusting someone like him had gotten her carriage destroyed. But in the end, she admitted that he seemed like someone she could actually trust. The scene cut to a light-hearted exchange of jokes between Hyol and Hyung, and then, without any explanation, Hyol suddenly appeared locked in a prison cell, with a voice declaring that he had been sentenced to death. The protagonist, just like us, had no idea what was going on. What could Hyol have possibly done to earn a death sentence? Will he be able to fulfill his promise to Seol and become worthy of proposing to her? Find out in the next video.